Welcome back to Story Corner finally. I've got a story from Lanarkshire for you today, with some common themes you find around Scotland, and a very important lesson to learn from it. This is a story of the Fairies of Merlin's Craig. Now, not so long ago there was an honest, hard-working labourer called Fergus, toiling away for his farmer boss. It was a tough life, both for Fergus and his master. So Fergus said to the farmer, "We're getting a wee bit low on fuel. We're going to need plenty of warmth with winter coming along. Will you head over to Merlin's Craig and cut up some more peat to dry out?" Now Fergus had never cut around Merlin's Craig before, but it wasn't for him to decide. Packing his shovel and basket onto the farm's only pony, he trekked out over the misty moor towards the lump he was set to dig at. Well, the sooner he got started, the sooner he would be finished. So when almighty thump, he sliced the ground with his shovel. He could have sworn he heard something like a little shout over a squelch of peat bog. It must have been his imagination. Just as he raised his shovel to go again, he heard a little voice from behind him. "Don't you even think about it." Fergus jumped out his skin. There wasn't another person for miles around. Nobody could have snuck up on him that easily. Spinning around, he couldn't see anybody until he looked down. There was a tiny wee woman in a flowing green dress with her arms firmly crossed in anger. And she shouted up at the labourer, "Are you just going to stand there and gawp at me after you've attacked my home? How would you like it if I came and lifted your roof off with a shovel? Put it back or you'll be sorry." Fergus didn't need told twice. He'd heard stories of the dangers of the fairy folk, although he never truly believed in them until now. Offending them has dire consequences. So he put the peat back, good as new, and he ran off towards the farm with a pony in tow. Well, the farmer, he scoffed at the story. "Pfft, the fairies. Aye, right. You've had a few too many drams and now my farm is going to suffer for it. Get back there and get that peat cut. If you don't come back with a full basket," didn't he come back at all? Well, poor Fergus had little choice. He had a wife and children to feed. They were living paycheck to paycheck. He was nervous as he cut into the peat again, making sure to do it at least a few feet away from the last time. And nothing happened. He cut more and more over the next few days, carrying it back to the farm on the pony. But he didn't so much as hear a grumble of discontent from any fairies. Maybe he really had imagined the whole thing. Exactly 1 year had passed, and Fergus had almost completely forgotten about those fairies. He was walking home from the farm that night. It was such a nice evening, he decided to wander the long road past Merlin's Craig. The scars from the peat he had dug out were still there, and he gazed down at them, and he started to feel sleepy. Well, it had been a hard day at work, on a warm day, so he just sat down for a short nap. But when he awoke, he was in the middle of a ring of fairies, all dancing around him, having the time of their lives. And then out of nowhere, the most beautiful woman Fergus had ever seen in his life stepped into the ring and asked him to dance. I mean, he was no dancer, but she wasn't the kind of woman you said no to. They jigged and they reeled, and all thoughts of his family back home slipped from Fergus's mind. All of a sudden, the music came to a stop and the fairies started to disappear inside gaps in the rocks around Merlin's Craig. And Fergus looked on in wonder until he realised that they were dragging him in with them. Inside, he turned to his beautiful dancing partner just to see she had transformed into that wee fairy that had confronted him that same day 1 year ago. "What are you going to do with me?" he stammered. "Only what you deserve for ignoring my warning. You stole our roof and you're not leaving it until it's grown back." Fergus could only sit back and watch as the fairies worked away inside Merlin's Craig. They were writing and sewing, and they made tiny fairy arrows, and he was sure he even saw a whisky still. Barely a day had passed when his fairy captors set him free and on his way back home. Not before making him a promise never to destroy their home ever again. While crawling out the crevice he'd been dragged through, he saw the turf roof really had grown back already. That must be some kind of fairy magic. Eventually, he made it home, although things didn't look quite as he expected. He didn't much time to think about that. He burst through the front door and he started to apologise to his wife. "I'm so sorry, I didn't make it home last night. You must have been worried, but you will never believe where I've been." He started to retell what had happened when a couple of teenagers walked in the room. "Who are these?" Fergus asked. His wife was standing with her mouth hanging open in shock. "Oh, a stupid question, Fergus. They're your children, but it's no wonder you didn't recognise them. You come in here with some made-up story about a night with the fairies and expect me to take you back. You've been gone for 7 years." Well, Fergus kept his promise. And his story is a prime example of why you never mess with fairies and you never, ever go inside a fairy hill. Lanarkshire.